In the Great Commission, we have been called to go make disciples of all nations. God has invited us to be part of the redemptive work that He is doing in the world. And when we think about this, we need to be intentional about how we go about it. And so what we want to talk about is a framework that will help us understand the different pieces that will be involved in us making disciples of all nations. And this framework uses a farming analogy to help us understand better the different pieces and ways in which we are to engage in making disciples. Our passage comes from Mark chapter 4, from verse 28. And I'll read. We'll read from verse 26. Mark 4:26. The kingdom of God is like this, he said. A man scatters seed on the ground. He sleeps and rises, night and day, and the seed sprouts and grows. He does not know how. The soil produces a crop by itself, first the blade, then the head, then the ripe grain on the head. But as soon as the crop is ready, he sends for the sickle because the harvest has come. And so here we see a farming analogy that tells us some of the things that are involved in making disciples. Let's see how this helps us understand the different things we are to do as we are making disciples. And so, based on that text, we want to talk about a farming analogy where we'll speak about 4 fields. Now, it's really one field, but just in 4 different seasons or in 4 different times. So think about it as one field, but generally, since we want to see the different elements, we will speak about it as 4 fields. And so, divided into 4 different sections. Now, as a farmer, if you wanted to farm, probably the first thing that you would do is to look for a field, a place in the space where you could be able to do your farming. Now, in the olden days, I do not know if they were plowing and tilling the land as much as we do today, because in the parable of the sower, we are told that the seeds were scattered in lands that were looking different. Some fell on thorns, some fell on a path, some fell on different things. So initially, the first thing a farmer does is to find a field. And for our analogy, we will call that entry. Entry is when you go to a space or a place that is new to you. It does not mean that nothing has been happening there, but this is a field that is new to you. And as a farmer, the next thing that you would do is to plant seed. And that, in our analogy, is similar to sowing the gospel. And so the farmer plants the seed, and the passage tells us that he goes to sleep and knows not how, but some of them begin to sprout. Indeed, it is the case that not each and every seed that is sown will sprout, but somehow some of them will. And following our analogy, this is where we see the plants beginning to grow, and the farmer needs to do certain things to help the plant to become as fruitful as it possibly can be. So in order for the farmer to make sure that it's fruitful, he will take care of it, he will put water on it, and do all those things that can help the plant to grow. And in keeping with our analogy, that part is what we would seek or consider as discipleship. So whatever the farmer does to nurture the seed, in this case, the farmer is sowing the seed. And as these eventually mature, the farmer will at some point harvest them and put them in groups. And the idea here is simply to say that as believers begin to come up, they need to gather together. They need to be put together so that they can be able to help one another. And again, every analogy can fail at some point, but the idea here is church formation. And we want that to be healthy. Church formation. So these believers begin to gather together so that they can spur one another on towards love and good deeds, so that they can grow and support one another. And as these groups are gathering together, at some point we would love for them to go to a certain level where they can be able to replicate this same process. And in order to do that, we need to develop leaders from these churches and these groups who are able to do the same thing over again. And so we want to call that leadership development. And so just in summary, first of all, using the farmer analogy, a farmer goes to a new space or a new place, sows some seed, and as they begin germinating, he will begin to look after them and look after them in such a way that they can mature and gather them together. And if he's a true farmer, he will not just consume everything, he will reserve some seed that he can be able to use to replicate this same process. And in the same way, using this analogy, as believers, we can go to a space or a place that is new to us and sow the seeds of the gospel. And as we do that, not every seed will germinate, but some of them will. And as new believers emerge from our seed sowing, we want to disciple them. We want to help them have an understanding of their faith and gather them into groups of other believers, churches, new churches or existing churches that are healthy. And in those churches, we want them to be able to develop leaders who will be able to replicate this process again. And our text was from Mark chapter 4, from verses 26 to 29. Now turn to your neighbor or a friend. If you're alone, find somebody later on, or even do this by yourself, where you explain what we are to engage in order to make disciples using the farmer analogy. Find new spaces and places that we have not sown the gospel seed. Share the gospel, sow the gospel seed. As people get saved, as they germinate, make disciples by helping them to nurture them, and then bring them into groups of believers, churches, form healthy churches or get into existing healthy churches, and develop leaders in those healthy churches that are able to replicate this process in other fields.